So yesterday on Instagram stories, I put out a thing asking you guys what types of videos you would like to see me do here on YouTube. And one of the responses I got back was how I make my YouTube thumbnails. Now, as I really don't have a formula to how I make my thumbnails specifically, there are some tips and tricks that I tend to follow on most all my thumbnails here on YouTube. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. So as you probably already know, thumbnails are really important here on YouTube because they're pretty much the first thing that is going to grab a viewer's attention to make them want to click on a video. So tip number one is if you're going to put text on a thumbnail, use the minimum amount of words as possible. For example, say you're making a video and the title is going to be tips and tricks for new beginner filmmakers. Instead of putting that on the thumbnail, because seeing it's going to be really small, people probably aren't even going to be able to read that many words on that small thumbnail. Go ahead and just put, filmmaking tips and leave the title tips and tricks for new beginner filmmakers, because that tends to look a lot cleaner than having a bunch of text on your thumbnail. Tip number two, and still talking about text, is have your text interact with something in your photo if you possibly can. For example, a lot of times in my photo, if I have a main subject, I will go ahead and put the text just a little bit behind them just to give it a little bit of a more three-dimensional feel. And often I find that this just makes your thumbnails to stand out a lot better and look a lot more professional. Tip number three, and probably the most important tip out of them all, is have a main subject and a main focus in your photo. This can easily be done by just placing whatever the main thing is right in the center of the frame, having everything else out of focus, and having the main subject, of course, in focus, having the main subject lit better so it's brighter than everything else, or even having the main subject have a more dominant color than everything else in the frame. Now, if you don't have a main subject, it's very easy to skip past, or it's easy if you don't have a main subject for your thumbnail to just look distracting because everything is fighting for dominance in the frame of your photo. So having a main subject, I think, is one of the most important tips to having good looking thumbnails. Tip number four is kind of a small one, but it's one that I think can make a big impact on the final result of your photos. And that is just when you're editing your photos, go ahead and scale it down to a smaller size. Often when people are looking at these thumbnails, they're looking at them on smartphone screens or computer screens. And keep in mind, you're normally editing a photo that's this big, but it's often getting viewed as being this big. So often when you're editing it and looking at it at scale where it's much larger, it can look a lot different than when it actually goes ahead and gets put on YouTube. So edit it, take a look at it. When it is smaller, you may notice that you need to make a few changes and little tweaks. And that's one that I've been using more recently, and it's one that I think has helped out quite a bit. Tip number five is if you need a backdrop for something small like products or anything for a thumbnail, go ahead and use some poster board. You can find these at stores for like $1 a piece. Not to mention you can find them in a bunch of colors, and the texture of this paper tends to look pretty nice up close. And that's one that I've been using a lot recently when it comes to product thumbnails for videos like, about lights or about cameras. And that's one that I've really liked using recently. Now, how I would edit my YouTube thumbnails color-wise, I'd pretty much edit them just how I would edit any other photo. So I will leave a tutorial I did, Lightroom tutorial on HSL, right above here if you want to check that out, feel free. But that is pretty much it for this video. If you did enjoy it, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button right down below. Also, if you have any questions or any other thumbnail tricks that you'd like to leave for anyone else, feel free to drop it in the comments below. Really like to hear what you have to say. But like I said, that's pretty much it for this video. I'll see you later.